Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reading the diary of Mr. John J. Nimber, the inventor of the Nimbers, which revolutionised the game of Nim as we know it. I'm now going to begin by reading the diary entry from the 15th of May 1956. Picture it, my dear diary. I'm at the local public house, my friends are by my side and the sun is shining. Could life be sweeter? While revelling in my peace, my glee, the devil gently places his hand on my shoulder. My worst nightmare comes true. Some buffoon gets out the Nim counters. Jesus Christ. Oh, John, you thought you could escape, but there's no getting away. Your stupid friends want to play this fucking terrible game, and you always lose, and they make fun of you for being stupid and useless. Until today, oh dear diary. Today I unleash my secret weapon. My Nim nuclear bomb. This is going to go down in history as the day the Nim world changed forever. For the benefit of the reader who may be unaware, Nim is a game played by two players. The game starts with multiple piles of counters on the board of various sizes. Each turn, a player can remove any number of counters they want from a single pile. You win by taking the last counter. So for instance, it might begin with a collection of piles 7, 7, 2. Player A may then begin, for instance, by taking 3 counters from the second pile, leaving us with 7, 4, 2. Perhaps then player B removes all the tiles from the first pile, removing us with 2 piles, 4, 2. Maybe A, being a gifted player, takes 2 from the second pile, leaving us with 2, 2. At this point, player B has lost. Player B takes 1 from the first pile. Player A takes 1 from the second pile. Player B takes 1 from the first pile. And player A wins, taking the final tile. It may not surprise you that John J. Nimber won many games of Nim that night. In fact, he won them all. He had in fact mastered the game of Nim. I'm now going to read the diary entry from the night before to explain how this might have happened. Diary entry, 14th of May, 1956.
It all began on a rainy night. Thunder rolled through the clouds outside my window, lightning illuminating my face. I lay tangled in my sheets in my filthy room. Another pub journey turned to mocking agony by those horrible slimes I have no choice but to call friends. I just couldn't stand it. What could I do? I began to have the most devilish of ideas. If I can't beat them by pure nimmery, I'll have to cheat. Maybe I could just remember all of the games of Nim. It won't be easy, but I can do it. Oh, John, you'll be a fraud, but then maybe you'll win.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But surely for such a journey you need a map. I began my map by drawing the end state of Nim, the game with no counters. Then, embarking on my great adventure, I wrote down the 1-pile games of Nim. On my map, I now had locations but no roads, so I drew arrows between games representing what might be done on a turn. Then I drew the 2-pile games of Nim, and I began to see my Nim venture sprawling out before me. Like a stone, rolling, shedding moss gathered from years of stagnation, I drew and drew and drew until every inch of paper in my room was covered with counters. At this point, I realised my memory is not, in fact, of historic greatness. I thought that maybe, to aid in my memorisation, it might be useful to assign to every game a value. But these values should not be random, and merely counting positions would be of no use. So I decided on a few rules. Rule 1. The empty game, the losing state, should be labelled 0. Rule 2. The value of the position must change every turn, so that I can always tell that the turn has changed. Rule 3. The value should be as low as possible with respect to rules 1 and 2. So then, Looking at our map, we can begin to fill in values. Surely, by rule 1, the empty game must have value 0. Now, considering the game with 1 counter, we can move to 0, so our value must not be 0, but moreover it must be as low as possible, so our value is 1. Considering the game with 2 counters, we can now move to both 0 and 1. Our value must be as low as possible, so the value is 2. We can keep playing this game with all of the single pile games, and by relatively simple logic, we'll see that the value of a single pile is equal to the number of counters in the pile. Next, it's quite reasonable to look at the game with 2 piles, each of 1 counter. Well, you might notice that from this game, we can only move to the game with a single pile with 1 counter. So our value may not be 1, but it must be as low as possible, so it will be 0. From here, we can keep playing the same game, filling in values. Unfortunately, for strange combinations of piles, this value, this perhaps Nimber, is incredibly mysterious. So there I sat. My map was drawn and my destinations labelled. Little more planning could be done. Now all I had to do was begin remembering. Just as I was about to swallow a mouthful of water, I saw the world turn upside down. A thought so gargantuan, so generational had entered my mind that there was no room for anything else. The Nimbers were the key. I realised, should a player be in a position with non-zero value, then because we weren't able to choose 0 for the position, we must be able to move to a position of value 0. Moreover, if a player is in a position of value 0, they must only be able to move to non-zero positions, because the value changes every turn. But then, if I am on a 0 value position, I always give my opponent a positive value position, and my opponent can always force me back onto 0 value, and I will keep going down until we have no counters left. And as I was always on 0 value positions, I must be left in the losing spot. So then, to win Nim, it's enough to start on a non-zero position and keep forcing your opponent into 0 value positions. That is, to win Nim, you only need the Nimbers. Sitting in my room, my feelings are uncertain. Without a doubt, this is a monumentous discovery. I've found some kind of Nimber. But I think to myself, in earnest, is this of any use? I can't possibly remember the value of every game of Nim. I have achieved a victory, but one that feels hollow. Oh, egads! I cursed the heavens. I cursed God that he might tease me, knowing how dearly I suffer. I look to the skies to brandish my fist and threaten whoever might be up there. I look out the window, expecting to see the usual grey skies of Surrey, but I see something else. The clouds have gotten darker, unnaturally so, to a disquieting extent. I begin to rationalise. Surely this is some kind of scientifically explained phenomenon. Maybe it was in the paper. But suddenly, a bright pink light pierces down through the clouds, a radiant beam shining directly onto my forehead. Shiny fire rolls through my body and my environment begins to shimmer. I see small striped men populating my peripheral vision, dancing and chanting in tongues. The walls begin to bend, vibrating in sinusoidal motion, matching the dance of the small men. My sense of colour, taste and smell seem to merge. A giraffe enters my room and closes the door behind it. I hear a booming voice, the heavens shaking. My brain is barely able to hold on to reality. The voice says, Definition, nim sum. For any two numbers, alpha and beta in the naturals, we define their nim sum, alpha nim sum beta, by writing both of them in binary and performing the XOR operation on each of their binary digits. As a reminder, John, the XOR operation takes in 2 bits and returns a 1 when exactly one of them is a 1. Thus, 0 XOR 0 is 0, 0 XOR 1 is 1, 1 XOR 0 is 1, and 1 XOR 1 is 0. Example. Taking the numbers 7 and 4, their nim sum is obtained by writing each of them in binary and XORing each of their digits. So our result here is 3. Theorem. Suppose we have a game of Nim with n piles, and further, suppose that the ith pile has alpha I many counters. Then, the value of this game is alpha 1, nim sum alpha 2, nim sum, up to alpha n. The proof of this is in earnest not very interesting, and left as an exercise to the dreamer. Mr. Nimber was able to find such a proof, and it was not interesting. Doing the same is left to the reader. A historical note. After the events of May 15th, which only became known to historians upon reading his diary, John J. Nimber enjoyed a meteoric rise through the UK Nim scene, breezing his way through local qualifiers, county heats and national tournaments. Opponents described his precise, insightful play, punishing mistakes Nim players weren't even aware they were making. Without ever seeming to struggle, he earned his invitation to the World Championship. I'll now read Mr. Nimber's account of the final day of the 24th Annual Nim World Championship, where he faced Grigor Ivanovich, a Russian player with a crushing record. Game 1. I began on non-zero Nimber. Victory. Game 2. Loss. Grigor played optimally, no mistakes. I hope this is luck on his end. Game 3. Anxiety overtakes me. I begin on non-zero Nimber. Grigor resigns. Victory. Interim between Game 3 and Game 4. My legs are shaking, and I feel a putrid sickness in my stomach. Every day since that spectre entered my mind, I have cursed him for making me a monster. With no way to lose, my victories mean nothing. I am showered with praise and adulation, but the only thing I can do is follow the twisted rules of the pink beam. I fear Mr. Ivanovich is a monster too. Faced with such a terrible reflection, finally meeting my match, there is nothing I can do but cower. Game 4. Loss. Tiebreaker tomorrow. I fear my worst nightmare has come true. I have met another devil in human form, another victim of the spectre. What if he reveals our secret? Tells the world we're nothing but frauds, reveals that there is no intellect or skill in our strategy, only Nimbers. They have announced there will be a new kind of Nim played in the tiebreaker, which is scheduled for tomorrow. I feel uneasy.